The way we think about news, the way we change our opinions, social media has revolutionised the modern world. And I'll be the first to admit, hands up, that without YouTube, without social media, without my speeches in the European Parliament reaching a big audience, UKIP would never, ever have taken off. So it's been a wonderful platform for those that want to take on and challenge the establishment to get their point of view heard. I also think Trump was the master of it. I mean, the Twitterata-in-chief, 43.6 million people now follow Donald J. Trump on Twitter. He, in turn, follows 43. But the scandal we've seen over the last, or the so-called scandal we've seen over the last 24 hours, Cambridge Analytica, who, through some very clever app, designed by a Cambridge professor, got people on Facebook to sign up to them, and in doing so, those individuals surrendered the Facebook profiles of all of their friends and their contacts. There's now going to be a huge parliamentary inquiry. Their account has been suspended on Facebook, and we're beginning to understand that if we engage with social media, if we're on Facebook, on Twitter, or anything else, we're beginning to understand that none of that data is private. Indeed, if any of you listening right now have, and every time I go to a supermarket, I mean, it's not very often, but if I do go to a supermarket, they say, have you got a X card? You know, Waitrose, Tesco, Lidl, whatever it may be. You know, I mean, all I buy is gin and tonic, really. But, you know, and they always ask, have you got one of those cards? And I say, no, I'm not having one of those cards, because I know that if I have a supermarket card, they know what contraception I may or may not be buying. They know what alcohol I'm buying, what vegetables I'm buying. They know everything, literally, about my lifestyle. So I have been very cautious and very careful about this. But I bet there are millions of you out there who've signed up to social media thinking that whether you're on Facebook or Twitter, it's a bit like having a chat with your mates. Well, maybe the Cambridge Analytica case has made you realise that, in fact, that is not true. If you're on social media, virtually everything about your life can be found out. I spoke to Brad Pascal, who Trump has appointed as his campaign manager for 2020. He said, with the data available, he said, I can virtually tell you what you had for dinner last night. So the question is, has this Cambridge Analytica case put you off using social media? I want to know what you think about this, and you can do it conventionally by calling me on 0345 6060 973, or ironically, you can use social media to tell me what you think by texting on 84850, by tweeting using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course you can watch us on Facebook. We've not yet been closed down, thank goodness, and you can comment there too. For me, social media was the way that I could get arguments around the back of the mainstream media straight to individual people. I think it's been an absolute democratic and social revolution. But even I had not realised really at any point of this until last year, post the Trump campaign, when I realised just how much data about our lives was actually there and available. You know, are you happy when you're signed up to Facebook, you have your friends, that if one of your friends signs up to one of these sites, maybe your details get revealed as well? Now look, have Cambridge Analytica broken the law? I don't know. But let me say this. If they manage to harvest the details of 50 million people, the Obama campaign 4 years earlier harvested the details of 200 million people. So when Obama does it, it's fine and dandy. But when this really nasty man, Donald Trump, and his associates do it, that apparently is bad. And there is some breaking news on this story. The board of Cambridge Analytica has announced it has suspended Chief Executive Alexander Nix with immediate effect. Now, Channel 4 News last night did a huge profile piece on Cambridge, and the suggestion was they were prepared not just to find data, but to also use honey traps to get politicians from opposing parties into real trouble. Anyway, Alexander Nix, the chief exec of Cambridge Analytica, has been suspended, as indeed has the Facebook account of the company, and Facebook shares yesterday fell 7% on Wall Street. Has this case put you off using social media? Robert is my first caller from Rochester.
Hello there. Right, well, first and foremost, most political parties use social media for whatever it is.
They do.
The major parties create Facebook pages and use the electoral roll to enter on. I don't know the legality of that, but I think it's immoral, but it's what's done.
Well, actually, Robert,
yes.
Before computers were in common usage, you know, any parliamentary candidate was entitled to get the electoral roll, to find out who in the street was signed up to it, and to go and knock on their door. So actually, all that social media does is to sort of short-circuit that process.
Yes, I agree on that side of things, but this is people's personal pages, and anyway, but that's slightly, that's just kind of making people aware of what's actually going on and why they get thrown requests onto pages. And then obviously on the second side of things is this personal data. How do we rectify this as an issue if it is a major issue? My belief is quite simple. You pay the person. So it's my data that they're using, they're buying and selling. So if I'm given 0.01p for every single transaction, that means anybody who buys and sells my data en masse or whatever has to be able to contact me at every point. And this becomes a non-issue because you know exactly who's got your data.
Yeah. But are you happy, Robert, that other people have your data and they can in turn share it down the line with other people?
If I've given them my permission, then yes. It's quite simple on
right.
that sort of
So to do that, you must tick a box of some kind, yeah? You know, whether it's on your phone or on a piece of paper.
Yes. And lots of people tick these boxes and don't really know what they're doing. I think there needs to be some tidying up when it comes to certain apps, because in order to download an app, you have to agree to the terms and conditions, whether you agree to them or not. You have to agree to them to have the app. But other than that, when you're receiving an email from certain companies, there's boxes ticked when you fill out forms. So you know, most people know exactly when their information is being used.
Okay, so Robert, you sound like someone who's pretty comfortable with his data being used via social media.
Yes.
That's fine. Robert, that's fine. No, listen, I was very keen to hear that point of view. Thank you for the call. Robert from Rochester, very happy that whatever he does online can get shared anywhere. He's got nothing to hide. He's a good, straight citizen. But, I wonder whether the rest of you feel that way. Harry is a brand new caller from Bath. Good evening, Harry.
Good evening. Well, I completely disagree with the caller before. I don't like it when companies are showing my data without my permission. And luckily for us, in May, there is this new regulation coming from the European Union called GDPR.
Thank God for Brussels, eh?
Yeah, well, you've made quite a good case for GDPR this evening now, Nigel, saying you don't like it when supermarkets know what you're buying in there and all the data that they're collecting from you. As of May, they'll have to get your permission to do that and share it on. So there's a European regulation there that you agree with, surely.
Well, did I ever say, Harry, that I disagree with every single thing the European Union did? No. Do I disagree with their illegitimate, unelected authority? Separate question. But I will agree with you, Harry, that the European Union are looking at this and are concerned about this, and it seems to me that virtually nobody else is.
The UK and the Data Protection Bill are going to implement much of what GDPR is saying. So that will give us as British citizens much better protection over our personal data. And hopefully it makes things like what Cambridge Analytica have done illegal, and it will we'll be able to hold them to account more as citizens over what they're doing in regards to sharing our data.
But can we be clear, Harry, that what Cambridge did is no different to what the Obama campaign did? In fact, the Obama campaign did it to 4 times the scale. Isn't it funny that Obama is seen to be the nice guy and Trump is seen to be the bad guy, and that's why we've got this row?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. They're both as bad as each other there. I think that they both, it's the same thing. The media should be focusing on both Obama and Trump, showing how they've both done the same thing and going forward.
Yes, and they should. No, they should. Absolutely. But, Harry, let me ask you, if we don't get changes in data law, has the events of the last 24 hours put you off, to some extent, using social media?
I wouldn't say it's put me off. I'm just definitely going to be more aware of kind of the permissions that I'm giving and making sure that maybe I take a bit more time to read a privacy policy, but I'm not sure everyone in the UK would actually be bothered to do that.
Do you know what, Harry? I've never read the small print in my life on anything, which has led to my downfall repeatedly. Most people live busy lives, Harry. They haven't got time, have they?
That's exactly right. That's why we probably need to promote data protection laws a bit better. So,
do you know what?
Understand.
I'm actually going to agree with that. I'd rather it wasn't coming from my friend Mr. Juncker, but I think actually some improvement on data privacy laws on the internet are now needed. Me, Nigel Farage, calling for more regulation. It's a funny old world. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show. Social media, our contacts, it's all in the news. The Cambridge Analytica case, the fact that Facebook are now in trouble, and it turns out you can sign on to some app and they can access the details, not just of you, but of your signed up friends on Facebook. And I'm asking you, has this case put you off using social media, or is it all simply anti-Trump hysteria? Because Cambridge Analytica say they were heavily involved with the Trump campaign. I'm not sure they were, but that's by the by. I'm going to go to Ian in Beaconsfield. Ian, good evening.
Nigel, hello. Yes, I'll tell you where I think this is going, and there's been hints of this already, which is I suspect that this will be used to try and undermine the American election and also to try and undermine Brexit on the grounds that it's unduly influenced the way people have voted. Now, clearly the establishment feel like they are losing the propaganda war. And I wanted to make a couple of points, basically, which is, the manipulation of the way people think is nothing new, and Facebook have actually admitted to doing experiments, they called it, but it's probably large scale as well, to influence the people's moods by filtering information that goes to their feeds. And furthermore, our own government have been guilty of this as well. And it was set up by something called 77th Brigade. And it's an army unit, 1,500 strong army unit that Mr. Cameron, lovely man, set up to what he described as influence the hearts and minds of the people. And it's specifically directed to manipulating data and the way people think on Facebook. So, this is nothing new. And if the establishment try and use this to undermine the way we voted, we can throw that back at them and say, well, look, you've been doing this for several years.
So isn't Facebook and Twitter just an updated, quicker version of what's always happened in elections for the last goodness knows how long?
It's propaganda all round. I mean, look at the right-wing press. I mean, the nonsense they print. They print whatever they want you to try and think, basically. This is nothing new. The difference is that until the explosion of social media, the establishment controlled everything, and now they don't. And despite their best efforts through the army, through Microsoft, through various other means, they are losing the battle.
Here's the irony, Ian, that actually social media, most of it comes from Silicon Valley, most of it is owned by the elite liberals in America, and yet it's been the weapon for Brexit, the weapon for Trump, and without doubt, the weapon that led the Five Star Movement in Italy to win the general election.
Exactly, and they thought it was their secret weapon, and we have basically taken control of it, and they thought they could control it. But if you think about the sheer numbers, even software finds it very, very difficult to filter everything. I mean, I've got evidence. I ran an environmental campaign, which I won't mention, but I've got evidence of when I tried to post stuff on the BBC website, and I created fake accounts, and it was invisible. Only me and my friends could see it. So there are algorithms.
So are you one of these sort of Russian-style bots, Ian?
No, not at all. No, I'm an upstanding English gentleman who had a cause, basically, and tried to alert people to it. But I don't want to go there. But, this is nothing new at all. And if they try and use this to undermine Brexit, then they will come across.
Well, I think they will. I think they will. I mean, Alexander Nix already has been up before one of the committees. We're now told that he stood down as the chief exec of Cambridge. But, Ian, do you think, and I take all of your points, but on the broader question I'm asking, do you think news like this will make people more cautious about using social media, or do...
I don't think it will, no. And I'll tell you why. Because I think people are fully aware of the fact that, pretty much everything they do on Facebook is in the public domain and will be analysed and stored, and if they ever get anywhere, used against them. And most intelligent people have realised that for some time. So I don't think this will change. It might change people's behaviours very slightly, but, it's not going to stop people using social media, which is probably why this story is happening.
Yep, OK, Ian, thank you. Points well made. And a plea now from me to young people. Please don't put on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or anywhere embarrassing photographs of yourselves. You may think age 17 it doesn't matter, but this stuff could live with you for the rest of your life. Please don't think social media is you just talking to your mates. It simply isn't. Now, I've got a phone call now. Talk about long distance. James, who is from Kataya in New Zealand. Good evening, James. Or is it good morning over there?
Yes, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, James. Good morning. Now, what on earth has motivated you to call from the other side of the world?
Oh, well, I normally listen to you pretty much most of the time, but obviously because of time zones, it makes it very difficult because I'm at work to give you a phone call and say my peace of mind.
Well, you're very welcome, James. So we've seen the Cambridge case. We've seen how data gets harvested and used on the internet. I'm not shocked by it. I'm not surprised by it. But I'm guessing a lot of people perhaps are. Do you think this case is going to put people off using social media, James?
I think what the case is going to do is highlight to some people the dangers. Because when I was in the UK, I used to work in trade union, and I used to deal with a lot of people, and a lot of cases which people never realised that it was coming to the workplace environment was actually social media. And I had one case where I had this young lady. She had just gone for university, and she was trying to get a position as a teacher, and we couldn't. She was saying to me, "I can't get a job. I can't get a job," and I couldn't understand why. And obviously, we asked for feedback from schools and stuff. And they'd say there wasn't an issue, but because of other reasons, which we won't name, we won't take her on. And what we found out was this young lady that years and years ago in her youth, when she was like 16, her friends had posted up drunken pictures.
Oh, damn.
And of course they'd found out that, she was, that was a youthful indiscretion. I don't think anyone at a young age has not had such an action. Themselves.
Oh, guilty, James. Guilty,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And I've dealt with people. You talked about your cards that you use at the supermarket and stuff. I've dealt with people that have used their cards and they worked in retail and they've done something and they've been caught with using their cards, for example, their partners. People don't realise that this amount of evidence can be used against you. And my biggest fear, Nigel, is when will it go from a company's looking and going, oh, that person's had a drunken picture, I won't like you, to, oh, actually, I don't like that political view. He's a conservative or he's a liberal. And that's my fear. People don't realise it's not what's happened today. It's where are we going to go in 10, 20 years' time.
Well, James, I made a plea, before you came on air, I made a plea to young people, please be cautious what you post on social media, because it can last forever. But do you think, James, and you're obviously concerned about this, do you think this case will make people be a bit more reticent about using social media?
No, I don't think, because the two biggest issues with this is that, of course, you can be careful, but a lot of things that I've dealt with, it could be your friends
Somebody
or
else does it.
family
Yeah,
that put
yeah,
things
yeah,
in.
yeah,
And
yeah.
two, just quickly, when it comes to, you talk about EU looking at putting data protection, remember data protection doesn't protect you if servers are in a different part of the world.
Of course. Listen, anything on this to be effective would need to be a global agreement. The EU on their own can't change a blooming thing. But I do, James, even as the biggest Eurosceptic that's ever lived, I do think on this they may be right at looking at this area. James, tell me finally, how is life in New Zealand?
It's great. It's great. Good. I made a good decision and moved. I did vote. I did vote on Brexit, and
Well, so you voted Brexit and left us.
I did, and I always get criticism for it. But
Were you going to get some from me as well? You should have stayed and helped us make a success of it.
No, I voted since I was 18. I've always voted, and I felt that it was my right to still vote because at the end of the day, I want to see the best for the country, and that was my decision.
OK, well, listen, enjoy life in New Zealand, and thank you for your call. And James there, who is concerned about what happens to our data and thinks people need to be a little bit more cautious. Katie says, I've been uncomfortable with social media for years. Now I've deleted many of my accounts. I've never looked back and value the detachment. What Cambridge Analytica should have done makes us all deeply concerned. Social media sites need more regulation regarding how they use our data. And Katie, I have to say, I'll say it again, I'm generally a free marketeer, but I begin to think that in this case there needs to be some new resetting of the global rules. I get on text. It's important to remember that Facebook is not the product. The users are the product. It's a free service. Why are people surprised? 'Cause, whoever you are, they are surprised. They simply don't realise how big and strong the reach is. And, as has been made in this last half an hour, it isn't just about what you post on Facebook, but one of your friends can post something and you get tagged in too. And I do think that brings concerns. Derek says, to prevent the use of my data without my consent is the reason why I do not use WhatsApp and Messenger. I do use Facebook, but not those apps where you opt in giving access to the use of your contacts. Freeness comes at a price. Do you know what? I've never ever heard the word freeness before in my life, but I have now, Derek. But I did enjoy this morning Jacob Rees-Mogg on with Nick Ferrari, and Jacob talked about secretness, and Ferrari said, surely, Mr. Rees-Mogg, it's secrecy. And for once, I think Ferrari got the best of that confrontation. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show. Within the last half an hour, Channel 4 News have shown more secret recordings with Alexander Nix, the chief executive of Cambridge Analytica, and he has now stood down from that position. And it turns out they were mining data, getting people to sign up to an app, and by doing so, revealing the information of all of their friends. Let me emphasise, this was not illegal activity. They managed to get details of 50 million people. In the Obama campaign in 2012, his people got the data of 200 million people. But I think there's a feeling that maybe Cambridge Analytica somewhat overplayed their hand when it came to their role in Brexit and in the election of Trump. But this revelation that friends of yours can inadvertently put your details out to commercial companies, political parties, has it put you off using social media? I'm going to come back to that, but I must get back for a moment to the hot potato in politics in Britain today, and it is fishing. And last night we debated the transition deal. David Davis, Michel Barnier, all friendly smiles. I thought crocodile smiles from Barnier, personally. But one of the things that clearly had been sold out was the idea that we would get back control of our territorial fishing waters on March the 30th next year when we'd left the European Union. And joining me this evening to talk about this is Aaron Brown, founding member of Fishing for Leave. And can I say, Aaron, you're not looking like a very happy man.
No. Not at all.
Was this a sellout? Was this a sellout?
It's an absolute abject betrayal of Britain's fishing industry and coastal communities. We were sold out on the way in, and now we're going to be sold out on the way out. All they had to say was no, and as they acknowledge themselves, we'd have become an independent coastal state. We'd have left the common fisheries policy of equal access to a common resource, and we'd have reverted to being like Norway and Iceland, where we'd worked with our neighbours, but we'd have controlled our waters for our benefit to rejuvenate our communities. There was a £68 billion prize there for doing so, tens of thousands of jobs, and Michael Gove blown out of the window.
Are you really suggesting that if we leave the common fisheries policy properly, take back control of our waters, that it's worth to the British economy how much every year?
6 to 8 billion every year.
6 to 8 billion sterling.
By the time you take the value of fish that we catch, double that for the 60% of resources the EU catches in our waters, and then you multiply it by about a factor of 4 to take quayside value to processed, and then obviously you've got your shoreside ancillary bases, welders, painters, shipwrights.
Sir Bob Geldof, are you listening?
Yeah.
Because you abused me when I was part of that flotilla up the Thames. I'm going to try and get you in one Sunday morning with Sir Bob Geldof to debate this. But, OK, you know, Brexit is a difficult, complex process. The government, and I'm taking their side for one moment here, just to be fair and to be devil's advocate, whether I believe it or not, but they are committed to getting us out of the European Union, to leaving the Treaty of Rome, and that happens on March 29th next year. Mm-hmm. So an argument, Aaron, could be made that the reason they're making all these so-called concessions is to make sure we leave, and then, once we've left that treaty, they might start standing up for the national interest. Now, Michael Gove, today, who is the minister in charge of all of this, was speaking in the House of Commons. Did he give you optimism that the prospects are that at the end of 2020, once transition's over, we will get back control of fisheries?
Not at all. I watched that debate. He basically resorted to a smokescreen of blaming other parties that they'd also sell fishing out. Well, who's the pot and who's the kettle? They gave no assurance that we'd be out. The problem isn't that we leave with Article 50, which gives us a clean slate, the treaties cease. They put us into a new internationally binding treaty, which will be called the Transition Treaty. And our huge worry is that this will end up going on in perpetuity. We spoke to MPs today, and they're really worried there's no guillotine clause there to finish the transition, and that the EU will try to claim for continuity of rights under the Vienna Convention, where if you don't have a guillotine where it says the treaty cease, like what we have just now, then everything we've given them in the transition will just roll on forevermore, or they'll put up a legal battle to keep it, and we could be stuck in the CFP forever.
Now, there's rumours about some sort of protest tomorrow, maybe even the double-breasted Jacob Rees-Mogg involving himself in a protest, which sounds very odd. What do you have up your sleeves for tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow we've scrambled at the last minute, obviously, with this betrayal coming out of being surrendered, and a boat from down the Thames estuary is going to come up, meet up with MPs and the media, and we're going to go up to outside Parliament and bring the problem, or the abject failure of the common fisheries policy, the most graphic one, which is where fishermen have to discard half their catch to find what they're allowed to keep, and we're going to bring that problem that the politicians have created to their doorstep. A lot of them are not happy about it, but they should be blind ashamed that it's okay when it's out of sight, out of mind, but they don't like it when it's on their own doorstep.
Now, I'm sorry, but, you know, as a founding member of Fishing for Leave, you sound a bit like a career politician here, talking around the issue. Are you suggesting that you're going to be throwing fish into the Thames tomorrow?
Absolutely. Absolutely, we might throw them off the windows as well.
Right, so this is almost like the French farmers who stand up and protest.
I think the British people have got to stand up now and speak, because we've been sold down the river here to Brexit in name only. Conservative MPs who are going to have to sell this on the doorstep really have to think hard of, are they going to put party before country? And the main thing is, with this discard thing that we're looking to highlight, is some people say, oh, well, darlings, it's okay, the transition's only 21 months, you could suck it up. We can't. The problem with the transitions, we're not frozen in time. The EU, we have to obey all EU law, including new law. They can bring in detrimental legislation to try and kill our fishing industry, this ill-founded discard ban being one of them. And what will end up happening is they can wipe our fleet out and then claim the fish we can no longer catch ourselves, because under international law, if you can't catch your own resources, you have to give it to your neighbours. So the EU has every reason to try and kill the UK fleet.
I have to say, that is, folks, the most pessimistic view I've heard of Brexit so far, perhaps with some justification, and we will see tomorrow something that I don't think I've seen in my lifetime. Direct action I mean, we may have seen it in the miners' strike, but that's 35 years ago nearly. Direct action from the fishing industry on the Thames tomorrow. They are going outside Parliament to chuck dead haddock into the Thames. I'm guessing we'll return to this story tomorrow evening. Aaron Brown, I'm not allowed to support direct action of this kind, but I'll be watching tomorrow with great interest, and I thank you.
Thank you.
So returning to the theme, Cambridge Analytica, your data, a friend of yours signs up to an app, and suddenly your data is owned by a company that wants to profile you politically for the elections. Does that put you off using social media? I'm going to ask James in Sunderland that very question.
Hi, Nigel.
Good evening, James.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm well. So do you spend your entire life on social media, James?
No, quite the opposite. I just try and keep away from things like Facebook and stuff. Because I know I work in IT. I've been in IT for like 30 years. And way back then, they knew that data was gold dust. They have been collecting this and storing it.
Yep.
And analysing it and selling it all these years. I mean, we are part of the ether of the internet. Our statistics, our data, even if we opt out, it's never going to disappear. Always going to be there.
Do you think, James, I mean, you work in the industry, but do you think most people who was late teenagers or mid-teenagers sign on to social media, do you think they realise the extent to which this information gets used?
That's the thing, Nigel. That's the thing. You get this opt-in or opt-out.
Yeah.
I mean, say you opt in when you're 17, can you opt out later? I'll tell you the answer. No. Once you've opted in, any time, even accidentally, you're in. That's it. There is no opting back out.
Mm.
And going back to the data Analytica thing.
Yeah.
With the Facebook. Wasn't there a study just done just a few years ago that says we were only 7 levels away from everybody else? So 7 friends.
Well, actually, James, that theory existed before the internet. That there were that you were only ever 7 relationships away from somebody else somewhere on the planet. That was always the great theory, wasn't it?
Can I just say one other thing about social media? These companies suck up this information. So things like, I don't know if people have heard about this, but variable pricing, depending on what you've looked at before, and so maybe that's a bit expensive, or they will change the price, and they can do it now. And are they doing it without our permission? Do we know?
James, the key point you've made on this phone call, and it really is, I think, one that everyone should think about. Once you've opted in, it's too late to opt out. And that's from James, an IT specialist from Sunderland. Thank you very much indeed for your call. And I can see all of this. I know where this is going. Cambridge Analytica. It'll be used to say that Brexit was illegitimate, Trump was illegitimate, and Pat on text gets it absolutely back on the money, in my view. She says, "Hi, Nigel, isn't it funny how Remainers say Leavers were influenced by social media, but in the same breath say we are too old and illiterate to know how to use it." I love that. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive at LBC. There's one hell of a row about Cambridge Analytica. They managed to get the details of 50 million people through what they'd done on Facebook. Mind you, that was peanuts compared to President Obama, who'd reached 200 million people's data back in 2012. Nonetheless, there's a big hue and cry. There's talk now of the European Union and perhaps others bringing in legislation to protect people's privacy. I'm asking, has this case put you off using social media? I have to say, for my own part, I've always been a little bit cautious. I do not have a supermarket card because I know that information can be sold and they will know absolutely everything about me. Tom says on Twitter, the control of information is something the elite always does, particularly in a despotic form of government. Information, knowledge is power. If you can control information, you can control people. Well, Tom, that may be true, but equally, it works the other way round, Tom, because actually Brexit and Trump would never have happened without social media. Social media was the way of going round the back of the whole thing, and Trump basically is a Twitter president. He used that form of social media as his weapon. He did it very, very effectively. Steve is a brand new caller from the delightful town of Callington in Cornwall. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. So, Steve, are you more nervous when you log in online about what's going to happen to your data?
I'm very more cautious nowadays. I feel that when I first joined up, I didn't understand social media. I'm from a generation where it was all new. So we would tick boxes just to get online. We didn't understand what we were signing up for. And I think it's not so much what we do then, it's how it's going to affect us all in the future. I think at the moment we're finding a scapegoat by using the Trump or the Brexit as an excuse to try and look into it. Those things have happened, and social media played a great part, which is a good thing.
It did. No. Steve, in terms of social change, political change, there's no question that these new forms of media have been absolutely decisive. But, Steve, we had a caller before the break. You may have heard him. He said once you've logged in, once you've signed on, you can never sign out. And you're saying you did that without full knowledge of what it meant.
Exactly. I think from my generation, these things never existed. I think the younger generation have got a greater idea now of what's going on than we give them credit for. And I think when we say to them about what they publish and what comes back to haunt them, they have a better idea of social media than we could ever have. And I think it's their generation that are the ones that are going to control it going forward.
Well, the generational gap, Steve, is huge, isn't it? I mean, nobody over 40 can even use a mobile phone to take a photograph, in my experience. They have terrible trouble doing it. But you ask a kid of 7, and they've got no trouble at all. But, Steve, are you concerned? I mean, I'm sure you live down in that lovely town of Callington, where I've been and campaigned, actually, politically, a couple of times.
I saw you.
But, 2013 I was there. We had hundreds in the town hall. It was a great evening. But I'm sure you live a very blameless life down there in Cornwall. But are you concerned, now that you're signed up to all of these things, that someone somewhere is doing a social and political profile of you?
Yes, I mean, I'm very cautious of what I actually put onto my social media account nowadays. If you was to look at my Facebook, I very rarely post on there now, on the simple fact that I don't want anyone to gain my information. I'll only ever put on there now what I want to get out for other people to know.
So, Steve, let me ask you, why do you keep the account if you're as sceptical as that?
Because I find it's a great way of sourcing. Where I live is quite remote, so I use it as a way of networking, communicating with my friends, as a simpler way of doing it. So therefore, the account is one thing. With Facebook, for example, you get the messenger that goes with it. So you can use Messenger as a tool, which gives you access to free calls, free Messenger, etc. by using the app. So you only use the Messenger part of it without using the Facebook.
Okay, but you are now, Steve, more cautious about what you say and what you do on social media.
Exactly, yes, very much so.
I think, do you know what, Steve? I think you're a wise man. I do honestly think you're a wise man. I thank you very much, as a first-time caller to this show, for making those points. I'm going to Lewisham, to Patrick. Patrick, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. Great to speak to you.
Great to speak to you. So, come on, Patrick, do you tell the world your whole life on social media, or are you going to become more cautious?
Well, Nigel, I think it really doesn't matter so much what you put on Facebook or what you don't put, because I'll tell you why. What happened in December 2014, Facebook sent a letter to everyone. I was one of them because I use Facebook.
Yep.
And in that letter, it stated that by using Facebook account on your device, you give permission to Facebook to look into the files on that device, which is being used for Facebook, and to pass that data to third parties. So if you use Facebook from January 2015, which I don't on my private device, Facebook has access to all the data on the device on which Facebook is being used.
Okay, Patrick, do you think that policy was honestly sold to Facebook users?
No, I think the letter was several pages long, and I only found out about it because accidentally I watched a short film about it on YouTube, and in that film the guy showed several sentences with this law, and I found those sentences in a Facebook letter. It's there. You can find it. But who's going to read several pages of some letter?
So, Patrick, have people been frankly abused, or is it their own stupid fault?
I don't know.
It's a tough question. I accept it's a very tough question. But I mean, who reads page after page of small type before signing up to anything, frankly?
But you know what's interesting? I told all my friends about it, and no one really cared. They still use Facebook on their device. I don't, but they do. So even they know about it. They know that Facebook has access to all the data on their computer. If they use Facebook on their computer, they still use Facebook.
Patrick, would you advise, Patrick, younger people to be a bit more cautious what they say and what they post on social media?
Not only what they say, but just to use Facebook. If you use Facebook, Facebook has access to the device, to all the data, everything you have on your device.
Yeah, it's actually rather scary, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think so.
I do too. Patrick, you're a star. Thank you. Tina says, I think the young ones will post anything online and not realise how many are actually viewing it. Well, Tina, it's not so much how many are viewing it, it's how many will view it in 10 years' time when they go for that key job interview and people are being damned by what they've posted as rash youngsters on Facebook. I have to say, at my age, I'm very, very pleased Facebook did not exist when I was younger. Otherwise, I could never have had a career in politics. Of that, there is absolutely no doubt. Adam says, social media is the only tool against the biased, liberal, left-wing news channels in the UK. Now Fox has been blocked. Adam, I get it. Look, I have used social media. I have the only political figure, current affairs figure, in the UK with bigger numbers than me is Jeremy Corbyn. I'm second to Jeremy Corbyn, but I have a higher level of engagement than Jeremy Corbyn. So I'm one of those people. I've ridden that social media wave. I've used it absolutely in every way that I possibly can, but I'm very, very cautious what personal information about myself would appear there. And my final caller on this subject is Joe, who's calling from Surbiton. Good evening, Joe.
Evening, Nigel. I want to speak to you. Thank you for your sacrifice.
It's my sacrifice. Well, thank you for that. So, Joe, I am one of the biggest beneficiaries you will ever speak to of social media. I've benefited from it, but I'm nervous and cautious about it, and I think the Cambridge case shows us why perhaps we need some rules of some kind.
Well, I certainly agree that there must be some rules. I think there are things that need to be looking at. The internet is very new still. If you look at technologies that human beings have developed over the eons, and the regulation has to come. Your freedoms on the internet, I'll count them. They might be somewhat decreased before your days on this planet end. And it's not just Facebook. There's YouTube. There's every supermarket. There's everywhere. Every time on the computer, even the providers. I'm not a private person myself, but I do want the people who can see my things and what I get up to and what I say to be trusted. And I can't trust them anymore. I really feel that I can't. How one-sided...
And does this case, Joe, does this Cambridge Analytica case make you even more cautious about that?
It does and it doesn't.
Okay.
I kind of felt that it was happening because I'm not a massive user of Facebook, but I do go on YouTube as my main source of, just entertainment.
Well, Joe, I've got to tell you, we've run out of time. Be careful out there.